A simple woman kicked out of resort. 2 hours later, her billionaire husband's yacht arrives. What happens when a luxury resort manager kicks out a woman just for how she's dressed? The shock isn't just her humiliation, but when her billionaire husband arrives on his super yacht 2 hours later, revealing a corrupt secret the manager was desperate to hide. Like, subscribe, and listen now for the full story of prejudice and payback. The uniformed security guard's grip on Grace's upper arm was firm, insistent, pulling her away from the cool marble expanse of the Azure Haven lobby towards the imposing glass doors. Humiliation burned hot on her cheeks, a stark contrast to the indifferent, air-conditioned luxury surrounding her. She stumbled slightly in her simple sandals, catching herself before she fell. Just moments ago, she had been politely inquiring about booking the resort's grand ballroom. Now, she was being physically escorted out like a trespasser. Victor Langley, the resort manager, stood near the concierge desk, watching her ejection, a smug, satisfied smirk playing on his lips. His earlier words echoed in her ears, sharp and dismissive. The staff entrance is around back. A charity event? Who are you raising money for? Someone like you couldn't afford a cocktail here, let alone the ballroom. He hadn't even asked her name, hadn't looked at the foundation brochure she'd offered, just judged her instantly based on her casual attire. Denim shorts, a plain white tee, and the color of her skin. The few other guests in the lobby averted their gazes, pretending not to notice the uncomfortable scene, their silence a form of complicity. The security guard pushed open the glass door, ushering her out into the blistering Miami sunshine. Grace paused on the pristine sidewalk, turning back to face the opulent facade. She met Langley's mocking gaze through the glass. Taking a deep breath, keeping her voice steady despite the tremor of anger within, she spoke clearly, ensuring he could read her lips if not hear her words. "You will regret this." Langley merely laughed, a dismissive wave of his hand sealing her humiliation. As Grace walked away from the exclusive gates, the sense of injustice felt as heavy and oppressive as the humid Florida air. What gave him the right? And what, exactly, would make him regret his actions? Grace Sterling cultivated a life deliberately shielded from the spotlight that naturally followed her husband. At 34, she possessed a quiet warmth and sharp intelligence that often went unnoticed by those who equated worth with ostentation. She ran the Sterling Hope Foundation, a rapidly growing nonprofit she'd founded herself, dedicated to providing educational resources and mentorship for underprivileged children in Miami's inner-city communities. Her days were spent visiting community centers, meeting with educators, managing budgets, and writing grant proposals, work she found deeply fulfilling. She preferred comfortable, practical clothes, drove a modest hybrid car, and found genuine joy in small successes. A child getting into a magnet program, a new literacy initiative launching successfully. This unassuming lifestyle stood in stark contrast to the world inhabited by her husband, William Sterling. William, 40, was the charismatic and driven CEO of Sterling Global Shipping, one of the world's largest maritime transport conglomerates, with headquarters towering over Miami's financial district. He navigated multi-billion-dollar deals, commanded a fleet of massive container ships, and was a major player in international trade. Their marriage, baffling to some in their social circles, was built on deep mutual respect, shared values, and William's admiration for Grace's compassionate pragmatism, which grounded his often ruthless business world. He trusted her judgment implicitly and supported her foundation generously, though she insisted on running it independently. Azure Haven was the glittering jewel of Miami Beach's luxury resort scene. Perched on prime oceanfront property, It boasted Michelin-starred restaurants, exclusive rooftop pools, a private marina, and suites costing thousands per night. It catered to international C-suite executives, celebrities, socialites, and the kind of old and new money that demanded flawless service and absolute discretion. Image was everything. The staff were impeccably trained, the decor flawless, the atmosphere one of carefully curated, expensive serenity. It was precisely the kind of high-profile venue Grace needed for her foundation's annual fundraising gala, their most important event of the year, aiming to attract Miami's philanthropic elite. Securing Azure Haven would lend significant prestige and visibility to her cause. Though she could have easily had William's office handle the booking, Grace believed in being hands-on. She wanted to see the venue herself, discuss logistics directly, ensure it felt right for the foundation's mission. She arrived that afternoon dressed for practicality. It was Miami, it was hot, and she was doing a site visit, assuming her serious inquiry about booking a major event would be met with professional courtesy, regardless of her attire. She underestimated the insidious nature of prejudice that could fester even, perhaps especially, within the polished walls of exclusive luxury, personified by managers like Victor Langley, who saw only surface appearances. Stepping into the cool, cavernous lobby of Azure Haven, Grace was momentarily taken aback by the sheer scale of its opulence. Soaring ceilings, abstract sculptures, hushed conversations over low tables. She approached the main concierge desk, holding her foundation's brochure. Before she could even state her purpose, Victor Langley intercepted her mid-lobby. His perfectly tailored suit, crisp white shirt, and silk tie screamed authority, but his eyes swept over her shorts and sandals with unconcealed disdain. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone implying she was lost. "Yes," Grace replied politely, offering a warm smile that wasn't returned. "My name is Grace Sterling. I'm interested in booking the main ballroom for a large charity gala next spring. Could I possibly speak with someone in events, or perhaps see the space?" Langley didn't even glance at the brochure she held out. He crossed his arms. "The ballroom? For your charity?" He let the question hang, heavy with implication. "I'm afraid event bookings are handled by appointment only, and there's a significant minimum spend. Perhaps a smaller venue would be more suitable." "I understand the costs," Grace said, keeping her composure despite the rising tide of condescension. "Our foundation has the budget. Could you at least provide me with the events package, or let me speak with the events manager?" Langley chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Look, let's not waste each other's time. People who hold events here," he gestured vaguely at the luxurious surroundings, "don't typically walk in off the street dressed like they're going to the beach. Now, if you're here for housekeeping or deliveries, the staff entrance is around back." The insult was deliberate, undisguised. It was then that Clara Evans, a young woman behind the nearby reception desk, spoke up hesitantly. "Mr. Langley, sir, I believe our event coordinator is available. I could call her down for Mrs. Sterling." Victor shot Clara a venomous look that silenced her immediately. "Stay out of this, Evans. I'm handling it." He turned back to Grace, his voice hardening. "I'm asking you politely now to leave. This is a private resort for registered guests and members only." "I'm attempting to become a registered guest for an event," Grace countered, her own voice firming. "Are you refusing me service?" "I am refusing to entertain frivolous inquiries that waste staff time," Victor snapped. "You clearly can't afford to be here." "Security," he signaled sharply to two uniformed guards standing discreetly near the entrance. "Escort this woman out. She's creating a disturbance." This was the inciting incident, the blatant, racially motivated refusal of service, the public humiliation, the escalation to forcible removal based purely on Langley's prejudiced assumptions. As the guards approached, Grace felt a surge of cold anger, but also the echo of William's advice. Dignity wins through action, not reaction. She didn't struggle or shout. She allowed the guards to take her arms, but not before looking Victor Langley straight in the eye. "You have made a significant mistake," she said quietly, but with utter conviction. As they escorted her through the lobby and out the main doors, the humiliation washing over her, her primary reaction wasn't just anger, it was determination. Langley wouldn't get away with this. This wasn't just about her pride. It was about the principle. Standing outside the resort's imposing gates, she took out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen, dialing William's direct line. Her immediate goal: inform her husband and formulate a response that would ensure Victor Langley and Azure Haven understood the gravity of their mistake. He said what? William Sterling's voice, usually calm and measured, crackled with controlled fury over the phone line. Grace, now seated in the cool, luxurious saloon of the Stellar Grace, their 100-meter yacht which, by fortunate coincidence, was indeed cruising back towards its Miami home berth after a short trip to the Bahamas, recounted the incident calmly, detailing Langley's words. His refusal to check her credentials, the public ejection. Staff entrance? Can't afford a cocktail? William repeated, disbelief warring with anger. "Grace, are you all right?" "I'm angry," she admitted honestly. Humiliated, but mostly angry that someone like him holds a position of power and uses it to demean people based on how they look. "Not for long," William stated grimly. "Change into something comfortable. We'll be docking at Azure Haven's marina in about an hour. I think Mr. Langley needs to meet both of us." While Grace showered and changed, selecting a simple but elegant silk sundress, William made a series of calls from the yacht's satellite communication center. First, he confirmed with his finance department the status of Sterling Global's significant corporate account with Azure Haven, used for executive lodging, client entertainment, and a major upcoming international shipping conference they plan to host there, a contract worth millions. Next, he placed a call not to the resort's GM, but to the executive vice president of hospitality for the entire parent corporation that owned Azure Haven, someone he knew personally through various business dealings and philanthropic circles. He briefly, icily, outlined the unacceptable incident involving his wife and the resort manager, expressing his profound disappointment and stating that the Sterling Global account, including the upcoming conference, was now under immediate review pending a satisfactory resolution. The veiled threat was unmistakable. True to William's prediction, just over 2 hours after Grace had been ejected, the sleek white form of the Stellar Grace glided effortlessly into Azure Haven's exclusive marina, dwarfing the other vessels. The arrival of such a significant yacht always caused a stir, and word quickly spread through the resort staff and guests, especially when the unmistakable figure of William Sterling, a titan of Miami business, emerged onto the dock, hand in hand with Grace, who now looked every bit the billionaire's wife in her elegant dress and understated jewelry. They walked calmly from the marina towards the main lobby entrance, the same doors Grace had been forced through earlier. Inside, the atmosphere was different. The general manager, alerted by the panic call from his corporate superiors following William's intervention, was waiting anxiously near the entrance, flanked by a pale and sweating Victor Langley. "Mr. Sterling, welcome to Azure Haven. We are so honored. There seems to have been a terrible misunderstanding earlier." The GM began, wringing his hands. William cut him off coolly, his gaze fixed on Langley. "Misunderstanding? Mr. Langley, I believe, explicitly told my wife she couldn't afford to be here and had her forcibly removed. Is that correct?" Langley opened his mouth, then closed it, speechless, color draining from his face as he recognized Grace. "Mr. Langley," William continued, his voice dangerously soft. "Allow me to introduce Grace Sterling, my wife, and the founder of the Sterling Hope Foundation, which was attempting to book your ballroom for its annual gala. Due to your assessment that she couldn't afford your services, Sterling Global will be withdrawing its corporate account and canceling the upcoming shipping conference, effective immediately. Consider the multi-million-dollar loss the price of your rudeness." The GM looked horrified. "Mr. Sterling, please." Langley acted completely inappropriately. "He will be disciplined immediately. Fired. Whatever it takes. Please reconsider." Langley finally found his voice, a desperate stammer. "Sir, I didn't know. If I had known who she was. And that's the problem, isn't it?" Grace spoke now, her voice quiet but clear, cutting through the apologies. "How you treat people shouldn't depend on who you think they are." The direct confrontation, William's immediate and powerful financial retaliation. It was a swift, decisive response to the initial insult. But as Grace looked at Langley's panicked face and the GM's desperate attempts at damage control, a new thought surfaced, prompted by the memory of the young receptionist, Clara Evans, who had tried to help. Was Langley's behavior just personal prejudice, or was there something more systemic at play here? The apology felt hollow, the offer to fire Langley too easy a fix. The complication wasn't just Langley's bias. It was the lingering question of whether it was an isolated incident or a symptom of a deeper problem within Azure Haven. As the general manager continued his profuse apologies, promising investigations and offering lavish compensations, a free suite, spa treatments, donations to Grace's foundation, all of which William coolly waved away. Grace noticed Clara Evans hovering nervously near the reception desk. The young woman kept glancing towards them, her expression troubled, making a split-second decision while William kept the GM and Langley occupied. Grace excused herself momentarily and walked over to Clara. "Thank you for trying to help earlier, Clara," Grace said softly, offering a reassuring smile. Clara looked relieved, but still anxious. "Mrs. Sterling, I'm so sorry about what happened. It was awful. Mr. Langley, he can be—" She hesitated, biting her lip. "He's often dismissive like that, especially towards—" Grace prompted gently. Clara nodded, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Especially towards guests who don't look the part, as he says. Or guests of color asking too many questions about the facilities or the bills. He tells us to manage their expectations or prioritize platinum members. But it's more than that. I think something else is going on." "Something else?" Grace asked, her interest piqued. "I don't know for sure," Clara whispered, glancing nervously towards Langley. "But things don't add up. The West Wing pool has been under renovation for 6 months, but no work is ever done. Guests complain about air conditioning issues in certain sections, but maintenance requests get lost. Meanwhile, Mr. Langley and Ms. Crane, the finance director, seemed to live very well." She trailed off, looking scared. "Listen," she said quickly, scribbling on a small notepad. "This is my personal number. Maybe I can tell you more later." She tore off the page and discreetly pressed it into Grace's hand, just as William concluded his conversation. Grace rejoined William as they turned to leave, the GM still promising action. Back on the yacht, Grace showed William the note, recounting Clara's hushed, fragmented suspicions. Embezzlement. William mused, his sharp business mind instantly processing the implications. Targeting certain guests to avoid complaints about neglected facilities funded by stolen money? It sounds audacious but plausible. This was the crucial turning point. Clara's fearful whisper transformed the incident from a case of unacceptable discrimination into a potentially complex criminal conspiracy. Victor Langley wasn't just a prejudiced manager. He might be a gatekeeper protecting a fraudulent operation, his bias serving a financial motive alongside his personal bigotry. Grace felt a shift within herself. Her initial desire for accountability for the personal insult now broadened into a determination to uncover the whole truth. If Langley and potentially others were not only discriminating but also stealing, possibly impacting the experience of many guests and damaging the resort's integrity, it had to be exposed. Her goal changed. Use her resources, William's resources, and Clara's potential inside knowledge to investigate Langley, Olivia Crane, and the suspected embezzlement scheme, linking the discrimination directly to the alleged financial crimes. Accepting an apology and Langley's firing was no longer sufficient. They needed to dismantle the entire corrupt system Clara had hinted at. This was no longer just about Grace Sterling. It was about systemic issues hidden beneath a veneer of luxury. Grace contacted Clara Evans later that evening, arranging a discreet meeting away from the resort. Clara, though nervous about losing her job, felt a moral obligation to speak out, emboldened by Grace's support and William Sterling's obvious influence. She confirmed her suspicions, providing specific examples. Maintenance work orders signed off by Finance Director Olivia Crane, but never completed. Guest complaints about those same issues being systematically downplayed or dismissed by Langley, often attributing them to guest sensitivity, and Langley receiving unusual bonuses authorized by Crane. Clara didn't have hard proof like invoices or bank statements, but her detailed observations as a front desk employee provided invaluable internal context. She mentioned overhearing arguments between Langley and Crane about budget shortfalls and the need to keep things quiet until after the peak season. William, meanwhile, unleashed Sterling Global's formidable resources. He tasked his chief security officer, a former FBI white-collar crime expert, and a team of forensic accountants with launching a covert investigation into Azure Haven's finances and management. They started by analyzing publicly available information, vendor contracts, property tax records, online reviews mentioning facility issues. They used sophisticated data mining to cross-reference guest complaints from travel sites and forums. With maintenance logs they aimed to acquire legally later. They began discreet background checks on Langley and Olivia Crane, looking for financial red flags like unexplained wealth or connections to suspicious vendors. Grace, leveraging her own skills honed running her foundation, focused on the human angle and the potential impact on guests. She considered whether her charity gala, still tentatively booked at Azure Haven despite the earlier incident, a decision they kept quiet for now, could serve a dual purpose, not just fundraising, but as a venue for a potential reveal if they gathered enough evidence in time. It was a risky idea, holding the event at the very place implicated in corruption, but the dramatic potential was undeniable. The investigation quickly bore fruit. Williams' team found evidence of payments from Azure Haven's maintenance budget going to shell companies with addresses leading back to post office boxes or properties owned by relatives of Olivia Crane. They discovered Langley had recently purchased expensive cars and a condo inconsistent with his salary. Online reviews, when analyzed systematically, showed a clear pattern. Numerous complaints about specific facility issues, faulty AC in one wing, peeling paint near the closed pool, unreliable elevators, often accompanied by comments about dismissive management, particularly from guests whose names or profile pictures suggested minority backgrounds. Clara Evans proved invaluable. Carefully forwarding copies of internal memos she had access to directives from Langley about prioritizing high-value guest requests, notes about specific maintenance issues being deferred by Crane due to budget constraints. While not direct proof of embezzlement, these documents painted a picture of mismanagement and questionable priorities. The pieces were fitting together. Langley and Crane likely siphoning funds designated for upkeep, while Langley used discriminatory tactics to manage or deflect complaints arising from the resulting facility neglect. Their strategy became clear. Gather irrefutable proof of the financial fraud and link it to the pattern of discrimination, then decide the best way to expose it, legally, publicly, or both. The upcoming charity gala loomed as a potential stage, but the timeline was incredibly tight. With the charity gala only 3 weeks away, the pressure intensified. Williams' team secured leaked copies of inflated invoices from a disgruntled supplier who hadn't been paid by Crane's shell company. Forensic accountants traced the money flow from the resort's operating accounts to Crane's offshore holdings. The evidence of embezzlement was becoming undeniable. Simultaneously, Clara Evans took a significant risk. Aware of regular senior management meetings where budgets and guest relations were discussed, she managed to leave her phone recording discreetly. During one such meeting, she was briefly called into to deliver messages. The recording captured a crucial exchange. Langley complaining about rising guest complaints regarding the West Wing's AC, and Crane dismissing it, saying, "We just need to keep channeling the right guests away from that wing." Blame humidity. Langley, you know how to handle the complainers, especially the ones who won't make a fuss publicly. While not explicitly mentioning race or embezzlement, it strongly implied deliberate guest manipulation linked to facility issues and Langley's methods for silencing complaints. This recording became a key piece of evidence. Langley and Crane, perhaps sensing scrutiny after the Sterling incident and Williams' canceled contract threat, which the GM likely communicated, became more cautious. Williams investigators reported possible shredding of documents in the finance office, and Langley becoming more paranoid, snapping at staff. They suspected Crane might be preparing to move her illicit funds. The team realized they needed to coordinate with authorities soon, but wanted to maximize the impact and ensure both Langley's discrimination and Crane's financial crimes were exposed simultaneously. Grace wrestled with the ethics of using her gala as the stage for this. Was it fair to her donors, to the children her foundation served? Yet the platform was unparalleled. Miami's elite, press, city officials would all be there, exposing corruption and discrimination within such a prominent luxury establishment. An event dedicated to helping the underprivileged felt like a powerful statement. After much discussion with William and her foundation board, briefed discreetly, she decided to proceed, framing it as an act of holding corporate partners accountable to community values. The final test involved coordinating with law enforcement. William and Grace, through their lawyers, presented their dossier of evidence, financial trails, Clara's testimony, the crucial recording, supplier statements, to trusted contacts of the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office and the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. Impressed by the thoroughness and severity, the authorities agreed to cooperate, obtaining sealed warrants for Langley and Crane's arrests, timed to coincide with the gala for maximum effect and to prevent flight or destruction of further evidence. The plan was set. Grace and William would make their presentation during the gala's main program, revealing the evidence, while officers waited discreetly to make the arrests immediately following the public exposure. The tension in the days leading up to the gala was immense. Grace finalized event details, her composure masking deep anxiety. William ensured his security team liaised flawlessly with law enforcement. Clara prepared her statement, ready to potentially sacrifice her career for the truth. They were ready to pull back the curtain on Azure Haven's glittering facade. The Azure Haven Grand Ballroom glittered, filled with Miami's philanthropic elite, civic leaders, and media, all gathered for the Sterling Hope Foundation's annual gala. Waiters circulated with champagne, soft music played, and the atmosphere was one of elegant generosity. Victor Langley and Olivia Crane were conspicuously present, mingling awkwardly, likely instructed by resort ownership to maintain appearances. As the main program began, Grace Sterling took the stage, radiant in a sapphire gown. She spoke eloquently about her foundation's work, thanking the donors. Then her tone shifted. "Tonight," she said, her voice clear and strong, "we celebrate hope and opportunity. But we must also acknowledge that true progress requires accountability, especially from institutions that serve our community." She recounted, briefly but powerfully, her experience being denied service and ejected from Azure Haven weeks earlier based on prejudiced assumptions. A stunned silence fell over the ballroom. William Sterling then joined her on stage. Large screens flanking the stage, previously showing foundation images, flickered to life. William presented a condensed, damning summary of their investigation. Examples of inflated invoices, flowcharts showing funds diverted to Crane's shell companies, anonymized data illustrating the pattern of guest complaints versus dismissals correlated with minority status. He then played a short, clear audio clip, Crane's voice instructing Langley to divert certain guests and handle the complainers. The final slide showed headshots of Langley and Crane. This wasn't just poor service, William concluded, his voice ringing with controlled anger. It was systematic discrimination facilitating large-scale embezzlement. As gasps filled the room, Clara Evans walked calmly onto the stage, confirming she was the source of internal information. At that moment, several well-dressed couples detached themselves from the edges of the crowd, plainclothes detectives. They moved swiftly, converging on a stunned Victor Langley and a horrified Olivia Crane, quietly informing them they were under arrest. The arrest happened quickly, professionally, amidst the shocked silence of the gala attendees, the flashing lights of press cameras capturing the downfall. The arrests at the gala sent shockwaves through Miami's business and social scenes. Victor Langley and Olivia Crane, facing overwhelming evidence, were swiftly indicted. Their trials resulted in convictions for embezzlement, conspiracy, and wire fraud. Langley received a harsher sentence due to the evidence of related discriminatory practices contributing to the scheme. Azure Haven's parent corporation, facing lawsuits and a public relations nightmare, cleaned house. The resort underwent a complete management overhaul, implemented rigorous financial controls, and, working with consultants recommended by Grace as part of settlement, rolled out comprehensive diversity, equity, and inclusion training for all staff. William Sterling, satisfied that genuine changes were being made, eventually reinstated a portion of the Sterling global business, making it clear the continued partnership depended on sustained ethical conduct. Clara Evans, lauded for her bravery, received a substantial sum from whistleblower provisions in the settlement and Williams Promise Scholarship. She completed her MBA and took a leadership role in Grace's rapidly expanding foundation. The Sterling Hope Foundation Gala became legendary, raising unprecedented funds and cementing Grace's reputation not just as a philanthropist, but as a force for accountability. She continued her work, empowered and even more determined. Sailing on the stellar Grace weeks later, watching the Miami skyline, Grace leaned against William. "They thought I didn't belong in their lobby," she mused. William smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "You belong anywhere you choose to be, Grace. And sometimes you have to rearrange the landscape to remind people of that. Her act of quiet dignity, amplified by decisive action, hadn't just reclaimed her own respect. It had sparked meaningful change within a powerful industry.